Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street. RotoStreetJournal.com, we breed and feed you fantasy wolves here with yet another round of our 2023 fantasy projections as we go division by division, breaking down all the crucial statistical outlooks for every single player on every single team. We're now in our second round of the NFC. If you missed the AFC, we hit all four divisions last week. Yesterday, we did hit our first NFC, the NFC East, and then today we're diving into, as you can see right here, the NFC North, starting with the Vikings. So come on in. A lot of intriguing fantasy goodness, including the first overall player in most drafts and Justin Jefferson. Lots of exciting potential ascension on the Lions. Justin Fields, does he take the next step? Lots to be intrigued and excited about in this division. So I will waste no more time. Come on in. Enjoy the show, obviously, without the truth today. Got off to a late start. He had to be somewhere at 2, so we miss him. He'll be back tomorrow. Around 12:30, we'll be kicking off our next division, the NFC West. But on to the NFC North, and want to make sure we cover all of these important players. If you're here live with us, please do get any questions in. If you're on Twitter, just comment on this post. I can't see it live, but I will make sure to get to everything after. And of course, any thumbs up if you're enjoying what you hear do greatly help us. But let's dive in. We will start first up with maybe the most exciting offensive team in this division. That will be the Minnesota Vikings. So come on in and let's dive into these guys. So in Kevin O'Connell's first year as the play caller for the Minnesota Vikings, he was always historically part of the Rams. He's the offensive coordinator, kind of more so entitled in actual action, given Sean McVay mostly led the charge there. But he did learn to be a much pass happier guy than typical for the league average. All those Rams offenses outside of one were 60% or higher pass rate. And then O'Connell gets his own offense last year with the Vikings, his first year truly being the lead play caller. And he gets even pass happier, 63% pass to 37% rush last year. I expect something quite similar in 2023. They had a great offense. They were one of the top teams in the league. If it ain't broke, don't fix it type of mentality. So I project over 670 pass attempts, 676 to be exact, 411 rush attempts, that nice 62, 38% pass to rush ratio. I think that's pretty fair projections here. And that does mean, just like they were last year in terms of top 5 in the league in pass attempts, Kirk Cousins will be right in that top 5 in pass attempts. Now, last year, he ultimately did not put up humongous numbers. I know I projected him pretty high. He was about 300 yards short of where I had him finishing. But man, he was expected to put up around 5K yards, and ultimately his efficiency was not the greatest there. And he ultimately put up around 4,500 yards. I do think this could be the year. Last week of the season, he didn't play a ton, given they were already firmly locked into their playoff spot. I think this could be the year. I don't expect the Vikings to be quite as good real life-wise, record-wise. They'll be contending right down to the stretch. And I think that could be all Kirk Cousins needs with the addition of very exciting rookie Jordan Addison, a year of ascension for KJ Osborne, and then a full year of TJ Hawkinson. I really think this could be the year he breaks 5Ks. Career high was 4,900 quite a few years back. I think this might be the year he breaks into that threshold. As you can see, on 440 attempts, I have him going for 5,136 yards, 29 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. He could definitely break into that 30 touchdown range. He was 29 last year, and with these improved weapons, 29 seems like a very nice floor to project him at, with the upside to get even further. Did lose Thielen, a nice touchdown scorer for him throughout the years he's been in Minnesota. So I thought keeping him steady with those touchdowns made the most sense. But that's a big aerial pie, especially yardage-wise, to be dividing around these mouths. Now, we obviously know one of the biggest mouths here will be Justin Jefferson. So let's just quickly look at our target distribution. 28% share, a whopping 189 targets. I have projected going to Justin Jefferson right around what he saw last year, 27% share, 186 targets, and only getting better and better as that Cooper Kupp style role, moving them all over the place. Some layup targets out of the slot, still averaged, right around a 70% catch rate, even though he was over 14 yards of reception. So I think he gets the biggest slice. Behind him, TJ Hawkinson, after he joined the Vikings, he was on pace for over 135 targets, which is incredible. 8.1 targets per game after he joined this team. Very, very few tight ends in the league see that type of volume. So I have TJ Hawkinson going right now for 128 targets, a 19% share, catching most of those high volume dink and dunk, a perfect fit for Kirk Cousins. He became an instant security blanket for a quarterback who likes his security blankets more than any other quarterback in the league. It might be 3rd and 15, and he'll still go for the 6-yard pass to TJ Hawkinson. So I definitely think another high volume, maybe not the highest efficiency, but not bad. 90 catches, 963, and 8 touchdowns there for TJ Hawkinson on 28 targets. I think he finishes second in this team on receiving. And then it becomes who comes out the most between these wide receiver 2s and 3s and Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne. I think Addison might edge him out slightly in the volume department. He similarly fits Kirk Cousins' style very well as a nice slot guy. Will definitely do a lot of damage underneath. We'll see if he can improve getting off the press at the NFL level. That was a big concern for him as a coming in now when he was a senior in college. Now he goes to the NFL. He wasn't great even in college at getting off the press. So I don't love Addison compared to some people out there, compared to a lot of the other rookie receivers. I wasn't as high on him as some others, but he is silky smooth. And in just a slot role, he could end up being a bigger volume beast than I project him for. Maybe I do have him in KJ Osborne a little too close. As you can see, 16% for Addison, 15% for Osborne. I just really like KJ Osborne. Anytime Thielen has missed, he's been an absolute stud, averaging close to 18 fantasy points per game in the games that he is the clear-cut number 2 receiver. So he might not ever be that clear-cut number 2 with Jordan Addison here, and certainly TJ Hawkinson, a huge mouth to feed. But I think he does take a nice little step up and is more consistent in all the 2 receiver sets. I know the coach loves him there too. He continues to rave about Osborne, who averages 12 plus yards per reception in both of his career seasons and right around 62 to 65% catch rate. So ultimately, how does the efficiency shake out from there? I do also give 8% to Alexander Mattison. I expected a bit more pass game work going for Dalvin Cook in the run game last year. Didn't happen, was definitely something I predicted that did not work out. I thought Kevin O'Connell, the Rams, Todd Gurley style usage coming for Dalvin Cook, not quite. So I don't have much more going to the backs, but right, last year they were around 15% or so total percentage going to the backs. That's where I have this going this year. But let's look again at the production I'm projecting for these pass catchers. Again, it leads the way with Justin Jefferson, 189 targets, 129 receptions, 1,896 yards and 9 touchdowns. His touchdowns are really the only thing lacking. There's no reason the guy can't score 14 to 15 touchdowns. If that happens, he's already the number 1 projected overall player at receiver, just really overall in the league, especially in these underdog drafts where it's receiver heavy. He almost always is the first guy off the board. So if that touchdown percentage, he's a beast, a big body. He can use the frame well. He's quick off the line. There's no reason he shouldn't be scoring 12 to 15 touchdowns, and that certainly could happen. But I'm just projecting in career line averages what I expect from him. He typically gets doubled near the stripe. So 1,896 yards, 9 touchdowns with the upside to definitely go for 2K. This offense really gets humming. Behind him, like I said, Addison and Osborne projecting out pretty similarly. I think more touchdowns for Osborne makes sense. I don't expect Addison to be a monster either deep or in the red zone. So 4-ish touchdowns. That's why I do actually like drafting KJ Osborne, especially at the price tags ahead of Addison. Addison going around round 10, Osborne more of a round 15 guy. Both of them coming out there in similar yards, 785 for Addison, 724 for Osborne, but a few more touchdowns going to Osborne, a few more receptions going to Addison. So in PPR, certainly a little more appealing to have Addison, but at their price tags, if I expect them to be this similar, definitely give me the guy going, 60 picks later in KJ Osborne. And then TJ Hawkinson, as I said, the second biggest slice with 128 targets, 90 catches, 963 and 8 touchdowns for how I expect this aerial pie to shake out. Mattison hauling in 40 of his 54 targets, right around 276 yards. Cook always around that 300 yards range. I do think maybe a slight step back in Mattison's efficiency, but he's been always really good and a touchdown there. But talking about Alexander Mattison and this ground game, I do really expect good things for Mattison as a runner, just given how much he has thrived historically in that lead role whenever Dalvin Cook has missed time. In fact, I'm going to bump this yards per carry up live here and see what this does to shake things out. I think 4.3, that's right along his career average. And that definitely boosts him up by about 100 yards or so, even just that point 0.4 bump in yards per carry, which I do, again, think is very warranted. Given you look at his games without Dalvin Cook so far in his career, he's got some soft defenses. I know a lot of people pointed that out and kind of harped on the fact that he has. But ultimately, in games without Dalvin Cook, 6 times across his career, he is on pace for nearly 1,400 rushing yards, 1,352 on 332 attempts. Definitely improves as a receiver with 65 catches as well, on pace for 20.3 points per game, 346 fantasy points in his 6 games without Dalvin Cook. That would be a top 3 running back if he was able to sustain that pace all year. I don't think he does. I don't think Alexander Mattison's a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a good volume guy. Whenever he gets it, he does seem to get better and better as the game goes on. He just knows how to find the end zone as well. So I like Alexander Mattison. I think he can be a very quality RB2 going in that 5-6 range. I think he definitely makes a lot of sense in the career of the Minnesota Viking running backs for the last 5 years. The lead guy has seen 65% or higher of the backfield carries. So 64% feels right in line with what I think Mattison can do, especially because Chandler, Dwayne McBride are the guys behind him. They might mix in for a combined 30% or so behind Mattison. But this will be the Mattison show, assuming they are done making moves. There are rumblings Zeke could end up there, and that could get pretty nasty. But let's assume that it is the Mattison show. 1,131 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. That's the one thing he didn't do a ton of when Cook was out, and kind of encouraging in that sense. He racked up so many points without being a touchdown maven. He was on pace for 8 touchdowns on the year. So I think he does finish right around 1,400 total yards, right around 9 to 10 total touchdowns, and 40 or so receptions. Again, a beastly quality RB2 season. I like him at his price tag quite a bit. He goes right around Joe Mixon, so I do prefer Mixon, as you guys saw in the AFC North projections. But Mattison, nonetheless, a guy that a lot of people seem to be really down on. And at the end of the day, volume is all that matters at running back, really. Volume definitely dictates usage much more at receiver. Because your quarterback, you need to be open for your quarterback to throw it to you, or have at least that trust to throw to contested. Running back, you get the ball, you're going to continue to pad your stats, even if you're not all that great of a player. Snaps is like the highest correlation, and I think he's going to be in a 70% or higher snap share type of role. So that wraps up my Vikings takes. Again, summarizing it, Justin Jefferson, well worth your number 1 overall pick. I do prefer McCaffrey in redraft, but in best ball, I like Jefferson a lot. Could see that touchdown spike to 15 and just be an absolute machine. Cousins, I do think, crosses that 5K yardage barrier, which does give a ton of aerial pie for Jefferson, as well as those behind him. And that 29 touchdowns, I mean, just if we did see Jefferson spike, if TJ Hawkinson spikes, we could see that touchdown total go from 29 to 35, 40, and that would make Cousins a monster at his price tag. But to me, I see him staying a little bit in line with the touchdowns of his career. He does have a couple 30, 33 is his career high touchdowns in a single season. Maybe he gets there alongside 5K, and that's still a nice price at his 10th or so round ADP. So that's my Vikings takes. Quality RB2 in Mattison. Like Osborne at his price more than I like Addison. I haven't drafted much of him since I project these guys pretty similar, but at a much steeper discount comes Osborne. I think round 5 or so, right around Mark Andrews in terms of projection, but 2+ round discount. I really, really like Hawkinson and where he's going right now in drafts. He was just a volume hog once he got to Minnesota. So that will wrap up my Vikings. We will next move on to the Chicago Bears. And I am excited to talk about this team because I am in love with Justin Fields. Let us move on to my Bears projections for 2023 and talk about what I'm expecting in Justin Fields, and is really his second full season as the starter. Much more weapons around him. Second year in the Luke Getsy offense. I do think some step forwards will be taken, but some reasons to have some caution flags raised here for the Bears as well. So let's pull you guys in here and talk about what I'm expecting. So no team was run heavier than the Bears last year, and I think something very similar to that in terms of 512 to even maybe 540 rush attempts are potentially on the table. 3 interesting running backs in this backfield, in addition to Justin Fields. At minimum, I do expect it to once again be a more rush, one of the very few offenses in the league, even across the last decade, to be more run heavy than pass heavy. They were last year. I expect something similar to be the trend again here for your Chicago Bears after they went for 571 rush attempts last year. Maybe I see a little bit more, 41% pass, 59% rush ratio last year was crazy. I think we do get a little more balance with DJ Moore added, Mooney back, Claypool, they sunk a round 2 pick. One of the dumbest trades you could possibly do. We can talk about that when we get to receivers. I do think with all these new weapons, it makes a little more sense to let's see what Justin Fields can do with his arm. Let's see a little uptick in passing production, and scale back the rushing just a little bit as a whole offense. But if they decide to run for another 550 to 570, I wouldn't be shocked at all. This ground pie remains big. I do expect them to again be towards the league bottom in average plays run. I have them spiking for a bit more pass attempts than we saw last year. Again, given those new weapons here, they were only at 393, less than 400 passing attempts last year. I don't expect it to be that pathetic this year. Another 50 to 70, anywhere in that range added just because of the new weaponry is how I see this team being different in 2023 as a whole. So now let's talk about, now you know what the pies look like, how I expect this to be distributed and shared among the teammates here. So rushing's where we'll start just because that's the focus of this offense. And as you can see, 32% rush share for Jalen Hurts last year. I think another 30 with another 140 or so. He had 160 rush attempts last year. I think 154, anywhere between 150 and 170. Seems to make sense to me for Justin Fields. Prolific, was about to break the QB rushing record had he not gotten hurt last year. So big fan of Jalen Hurts. And then it gets really ugly. So I wanted to kind of start with this so we can kind of look at it and move on. Khalil Herbert's supposed to be and projected to be the starter right now and entering camp as the lead back, but they loved Donta Foreman, all the coaching praise, how excited they were to get him in there. They also hand select Roschon Johnson. Very intriguing guy, but behind Bijan Robinson his whole college career, but a lot of his metrics are right in line efficiency-wise and yards broken after attempt, and a lot of intriguing traits to Roschon as well. So to me, I see 3 pretty talented guys in a run-heavy scheme without any of them gaining a ton of clarity. If one of them separates, it's going to be a great ground pie. It's going to be an efficient ground game. You got Justin Fields taking a lot of the defense one way. The running backs will have some nice open lanes to cut back to. But I just think it's going to be so weirdly distributed. Maybe Foreman's more of a goal line guy. Herbert's the between the 20, and Roschon carves out a receiving role. I have no idea, but a 3-headed committee is always bad. A 3-headed committee in an offense that's projected to be one among the lowest in terms of scoring and total plays run gets a little uglier, even more so. And then you also mix in the fact that 30% of the pie is going to the quarterback. Great goal line vulture there as well. So that's the most intriguing rusher on this team, in my opinion, is Justin Fields going for 1,000 yards yet again, 8 or so touchdowns yet again. You're right, last year was 7.1 yards a clip. I don't think that changes. So much of what he does is, especially with them having to account for DJ Moore and some of these weapons downfield, he's going to have some very open rushing lanes. And you saw last year, Lamar Jackson style, the way this guy can knife through defenses. He's a beast at the stripe as well. Tall, uses that big body. So I definitely think some nice, strong rushing from Justin Fields this year. So 1,000 yards through the ground with everybody else here. Khalil Herbert, 823 and 5, 563 and 6 for Donta Foreman. Roschon getting the short end of the stick in my projections. But again, he has the talent to definitely end up being the lead guy here. I just don't know if any of those guys are ultimately consistent or valuable enough in redraft. A handful of spike weeks here and there make them viable at their low round, 12th round for Herbert and 15th round for Foreman. Roschon's the one I'm avoiding. He's right after Khalil Herbert, like round 13, 14. To me, I think Foreman outproduces him and goes a round or two later. So if I'm getting a Bears back, which isn't very often, it's either Herbert at his round 12 price, Foreman has round 14 to 15 price tag. Given, I think he could definitely be a touchdown beast there. But I'm not going out of my way to get any of these backs. But I am going on my way to get Justin Fields again. Should be the lead rusher on this team while taking a big step forward. Now, he didn't even throw for 3,000 passing yards last year, but I think a nice Jalen Hurts level next up could very much be in store for Justin Fields. Going about 400 to 500 more passing yards. I think DJ Moore, healthy Darnell Mooney, and then if Claypool can show any signs of life, that's not a huge jump for Justin Fields. He really could get closer to 4K if this is a Jalen Hurts style leap. I don't know that he's a Jalen Hurts level passer quite yet, though. So I wanted to be a little bit more conservative with him, even with the weapons boost. But I think a big spike in touchdowns after being under 20 last year, going to 25, And again, being under 3K yards last year, getting bumped up now to 3,400, 3,500 or so seems to make sense for Justin Fields. And with that rushing work, that would definitely put him right in line for a top 5 quarterback season. I love where he's going in like mid round 5 right now. He's sometimes falling to. I think it's a great spot to snag this guy. So I like Justin Fields quite a bit. Now, in terms of his receivers and how that passing game, so already right away you can see it's not a big aerial pie I'm projecting. We just went from a 5K Kirk Cousins to now a 3,300 Justin Fields with less touchdowns as well. So even if I have DJ Moore going for 26%, and I thought I liked DJ Moore more than he ended up getting statted out here. As a player, I've always really liked him, but I just don't know if there will be enough aerial pie for him to really pay off that early 4th, mid 4th price tag that we're seeing right now. I think he's going to be a guy that takes a little bit of a fall in my rankings just because I still project him very highly. 26% target share, good catch rate, good efficiency, good touchdown rate. And even then, I just think the aerial pie might not be big enough for a huge season. Now, 77, 962, and 7, yeah, that's not a bad season. That's certainly a quality I'd say a mid-range wide receiver too, is that's where you're kind of looking at there. And at his 4th round price tag, I think you're looking for a little bit more high-end wide receiver to a K and 8 with 85 catches or so. But still a pretty good season for DJ Moore. And all the reports are these two are synced up. They're like best friends. So if that ended up being like a 30%, a Devontae Adams style target share, and we get to 150 targets and 85 to 90 receptions and well over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's within the ceiling for DJ Moore. Absolutely. If this rapport and all of the beat writers, the opposing defense, it's 1 to 2, and DJ Moore being number 2 and Justin Fields being 1. Apparently, they are just connecting nonstop in red zone and 2-minute no huddle offense, all that good stuff. So I could definitely see DJ Moore beating this projection out, but it would require either A, the team is a lot pass happier than I'm projecting, or B, he just gets a 30% slice. Within the realm of possibility, but I thought this seemed like a nice, fair middle ground there. I love Darnell Mooney as a player. He's, in his past few years, been the anchor of this pass game, 25 and 26% target share in his last 2 seasons. The 2 years ago, that was a much pass-happier attack. It was not Justin Fields played for about half the season, but we saw 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns for Darnell Mooney. I actually think this move to the secondary role could be a boon for him. We won't see 1,000 yards, but I do think he can eat up number 2 corners, stretch this defense. Justin Fields does have himself a nice deep ball. So I think he returns in a solid fashion right now where he's going. Pretty fair price tag. I guess I did project KJ Osborne for better stats, and he goes even later than Darnell Mooney. But I like Mooney. I think he's a great player. I really, really think he's a wonderful number 2 for this offense. So maybe this passing game does take a bigger step when you think about the trickle-down effect of a DJ Moore hogging number 1 attention, Mooney now feasting on number 2s. And if Claypool could have any kind of spine, I mean, I hate that guy. I think he's a loser. So I don't expect him to have a spine, as you can see by these projections, only warranting himself 11% share. And even with that, not doing a whole ton of consistent work. I don't love Claypool. 416, 3 touchdowns, 32 catches. That's not going to get you there. But Mooney, 7-10-4, probably 2 or 3 huge weeks with a smattering of some really big duds. But definitely, again, I keep saying I like him better in best ball. I think he's the type of player that you might not want in your yearly leagues outside of a random flex that could boom for you. I like him in best ball, though, because I do think you're going to get some 20, 25-point weeks out of Darnell Mooney with some big spikes. And then last couple guys to talk about in this passing game. I'm intrigued by Tyler Scott, especially with Mooney and Claypool as free agents. So dynasty-wise, I think Scott's a really intriguing asset. I just don't see enough volume as a whole offense to sustain more than 2 receivers, really, but certainly not the 4th receiver here. So he's not a guy I'm going out of my way to draft and redraft, but maybe in dynasty, somebody that I think is falling a little far because I'd like the player a lot. I think Tyler Scott, if he beats out Claypool, wouldn't be shocked at all, but I just still don't even think the 3rd receiver here is all that valuable. But I do expect Kmet to have himself another good season, finishing with 7 touchdowns last year, kind of emerge a 19% target share as the wide receiver 1. I think with DJ Moore, Mooney healthy, I think that trickles down to about a 17% target share, 79 total targets, a little bit below what he saw last year, but still think similar efficiency. So steps backwards in yards and touchdowns just because the volume takes it's a little bit of a hit here. But as a player, I like Kmet and definitely could see him being he's just kind of in that lump of okay tight ends that you hope they spike for a touchdown. Tight ends, 10 through 16, very similar. He's part of that mold and projects very similarly to some of those guys, is where I expect Kmet to be. But the big takeaways, again, ugly backfield. Don't love any of them, but they are cheap enough at their price tags and talented enough players that if one did truly emerge, they could be great plays. So I do still invest in it, even though I don't project it to be all that great of a situation on the off chance somebody takes over. I project more very highly in terms of the slice he gets of this pie, 26% slice, but with it being such a small pie, I don't know that that ultimately pays off the price tag you're getting for him. Mooney, an intriguing player, but the real highlight, of course, here is Justin Fields with the 1,000+ yard upside on the ground, with the 35+100 yard upside for Justin Fields as well. And if he does really spike as a passer, he could approach that Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields tier, Josh Allen rather tier. If we can get this to like a 4K and 30 type of situation, everybody's saying how he's at the next level and the offense is just flowing so much faster through him. Maybe we saw this with Josh Allen. He was under 4K passer and then exploded for 4,500 yards. I think the play caller was better there, though. I think Josh Allen's just a better player than Justin Fields. But there is that realm of possibility. And even if he doesn't, if this is his floor that I'm projecting him for, still a nice top 5 floor with some huge spike weeks built into there when he runs for 200 yards type of games. All righty. That wraps up my Chicago Bears projection. We are now going to move on to our next team in this division, the Green Bay Packers. As we're pulling this team up, Wolfpack, be so greatly appreciate a thumbs up button if you're here with us enjoying the show. It does truly help us get out to more people, help us reach a better audience. And if you're new along here and you haven't already hit that sub, and of course, get those questions on in, we'll answer anything and everything we get. All this content, of course, will be at rotostreetjournal.com as well. So let us now move into Green Bay, go to Wisconsin, baby, for the Green Bay Packers. The Jordan Love era is here. What do we expect in this new offense from him, and who is going to benefit or go backwards because of the move away from that former MVP, one of my least favorite players in the league, as you guys know, in Aaron Rodgers. But I do expect this to be a little bit of a step back, even though I shit on Rodgers all the time. I do think a very efficient passer can definitely sustain himself a quality entire aerial pie there. I don't know if I believe in Jordan Love. Now, all the talk so far in camp from the receivers, from the coaches, from the beat writers, they don't see much of a difference in the way this offense is operating with Love. They think he is every bit as good. Some players on the team saying he's the best quarterback in the league. That scenario exists. I think it's about a 1% to 2% chance that actually happens when he's played. He definitely showed a step forward last year in his action compared to 2 seasons ago when we saw him on the field. So there were glimpses of a much better Jordan Love. But I file that under let's believe it when I see it, that this offense can hum at a similar level without Aaron Rodgers. I do expect a step back. And as you can see, that starts at the volume level, as I'll zoom in here. LaFleur's offenses have consistently been below league average, whether it's -10 below league average, -20, some years even -30 below league average. I'm expecting a really big drop-off. He likes to play conservative. He doesn't push the pace. He does like to have close to a 50-50 split in his backfield, the pass versus rush ratio. So I think this is a very much in line overall pie, under 1,000 total plays, one of the slowest offenses in the league. Lean on our good secondary, our defense, and let it bleed out. To me, I see a similarity between this offense and the Tennessee offense he's coordinated before coming here. That was 49% pass, 51% rush. I don't think it will get to that extreme, but even with Aaron Rodgers, this definitely reminds me of 2019. Rodgers MVP season too, 54% pass, 46% run, -50 plays overall in the league average. So I think it'll be a little bit of a slower paced, lower volume attack with a new quarterback at the helm. How do we see those pies being distributed? So ultimately, I do have him still being a fairly efficient touchdown passer. We saw that. I like LaFleur's scheme. He does like to run it when he throw it when he gets in close. So I do think 27 touchdowns, 4,000-ish yards. That's not impossible. He's also a little bit more mobile than Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love is. So 243 and 2. He's not a Konami threat, but I think Pat Mahomes, in terms of his escapability, his mobility, he can move. And so 4.5 yards a carry, a couple touchdowns on the ground. That seems reasonable for Jordan Love. So this would be an okay season should he put this up. And how do I expect the receivers to shake out from there? So I do have Christian Watson leading the way at 21% share. Again, a lower volume attack. 21% share only equates to 112 targets to lead this team, followed by Romeo Doubs, who some people are saying is actually leading this team in early camp. Seems like the go-to guy for Jordan Love. He's certainly singing Jordan Love's praises all offseason, saying there's no difference between him and Aaron Rodgers, getting himself in the good graces. Not a bad play there from Romeo Doubs, who definitely had his flashes as a rookie, was like the all-star of camp and carried that over to some big games. I really like Romeo Doubs. As you can see, there's not a huge gap in terms of volume between him and Christian Watson. I do expect a bit more production out of Watson, one of the freakish players in the leagues last year, especially as a touchdown scorer. The way this guy did so much with such little volume last year, never saw more than 8 targets a game, was wide receiver 67 in targets on the year, and yet still top 4 in touchdowns as a receiver. Watson also, from week 10 on, he was the starter. That's the first time he entered the starting lineup. Week 10 to week 13, he was a top 10 receiver in 4 straight games. He was a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. So we saw a brief glimpse of it. If he's on the field all the time and puts it together, this guy can be an absolute stud. Such an explosive athlete, great deep ball artist after the catch when they were drawing up screens for him, knifing through defenses, using him as a rusher. And they're already talking about expanding his route tree too. I love this player. I really am into Christian Watson. If this offense ends up throwing it more often than I expect, let's say LaFleur decides, I want to prove it to Aaron Rodgers was a douchebag, and let's show we're even better with Jordan Love. I don't know. Coach sometimes does that. We could see both of these receivers spiking. But as just a talent edge, I do give that to Watson. His price tag, and most fantasy owners would do the same. So going right now around round 4, I like getting him there. I think he is an explosive guy with a ceiling for plenty more yards if, again, this offense is a bit more pass happy than I'm projecting. But I do think the volume he gets, like we saw last year, he's going to thrive. And you don't have that risk. Yes, Rodgers is typically, you'd want him for your receivers, but with a young guy like Christian Watson, a little bit raw, one drop, one misaligned route, and he's off the field with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's going to happen with Jordan Love. So I like him a lot this year. I do have him also rushing for 81 and a touchdown, just like we saw last year. So right around 1,000 total yards and 10 total touchdowns on 67 catches, with the ceiling for a lot more. But that felt like a fair projection so far. But it does bring us to Doubs, who going much later with Christian Watson around 4 guy. Doubs is going around pick 125 to 130 right now. Earlier drafts, I was getting him at 150. I have a lot of Romeo Doubs. He's in the top 4% of wide receivers owned in best ball drafts for Underdog. As you can see, I think he'll be a little more consistent, 65% catch rate, a little bit less volume. So 66 catches, 812 yards. And he's a good touchdown scorer himself too. So 6 touchdowns, not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. A quality wide receiver 3 flex play that I think is going way too late, especially because behind these two, there's not a whole lot that I expect you. They did draft Jaden Reed, and I like Jaden Reed. I think this is an exciting rookie coming in here, a great slot guy. He's battling Samari Torrey right now for that slot role. And I wouldn't be shocked if one of them wins it, is just outright the guy. And then, Reed goes from 75 targets to inheriting about 30 of these other ones and being right there with the others as a target share. That's within the realm of possibility. And Reed is certainly talented enough to potentially even take over Doubs at this point. So I like Jaden Reed. I do think there could be rookie growing pains. It seems like we've seen that often with the LaFleur system. It takes a little bit for these guys to fully get going. It is a more complicated offense than your typical scheme. So I do have him 642 and 4, an interesting player, but right now he goes only a few rounds, 1 to 2 rounds after Romeo Doubs. And I see a really big gap between those guys. Leading the way at tight end would be Luke Musgrave, who has been one of the stars of early training camp. He's been the tight end 1 already running with Jordan Love, showing some great prowess after the catch, and coaches raving about how smart and far ahead this guy is than your typical rookie. So I do like Musgraves as a player and the hype coming into him. I just don't, again, think this aerial offense can sustain much more beyond Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs at 13% share, 70 targets, 48 catches, 576 and 3. It's an okay season, but not somebody I'm really going on my way to draft. The only other mouth to feed in the passing game would be, at least big one, in the backfield. I do think Aaron Jones, who has been right around 60 to 70 targets through the last 8 years, I do think he stays right in line with all of that, especially with no Allen Lazard, no Randall Cobb. A lot of underneath work is going to be up for grabs. I think Aaron Jones is a great candidate to get right in there. He's consistently put up 3 to 5 receiving touchdowns throughout his career. So I really like him to remain a big part of the passing game with 50 catches or so, 400 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. And then we'll just move right into the ground pie and talk about how this gets distributed. So I do think a little more work goes to the quarterback as a rusher. But then just as we've seen the last 2 to 3 years with A.J. Dillon since he arose, it's a near 50-50 split once you get down there between these two guys. So I have Jones barely eking him out. 184 carries for Jones, 176 for A.J. Dillon. Both of them are good, efficient, talented runners. We only saw 2 touchdowns out of Aaron Jones last year on the ground. Just 4 seasons ago, he had 16, though. So I could see this one definitely meeting in the middle. It seemed like a few of the big plays that we're come to know and expect out of Aaron Jones weren't quite there, that breakaway gear. He is getting up there in age, so maybe he's not hitting the wall, but just not nearly that big play guy we've seen. And maybe he is. We'll find out. I've always really liked the player, though. He still was the running back 8 last year. And over the last 4 years, he's been a running back 1 in points per game, really every single time. It breaks down into running back 8, running back 11, running back 5, and running back 2 in points per game his last 4 years. But it is a bit boom, bum, bust in how you get those. So that's the one risk with him. Another one of those guys, better in best ball, but the spikes will obviously boost your team forward. And then the bad weeks, the regressions, they won't be in your lineup when you have a guy like Aaron Jones. A little more maddening to own in redrafts. But then A.J. Dillon, he's been right around 40-ish% of the backfield work since he's arrived there in Green Bay. He was the lead touchdown scorer last year with 7. I do expect him to remain that main guy at the stripe with maybe a few less opportunities at the stripe. And he can catch too, 41 targets, 28 catches last year. He's not nearly Aaron Jones on that level, but it's not like it becomes a complete and utter zero. So I think 25 for 220 or so, around 1,000 total yards, around 6 to 8 touchdowns. Seems okay for A.J. Dillon. Not a guy I've been getting too much for, but of course the ultimate type of handcuff with benefits. When he starts, he does thrive. So if Jones misses any time, which he frequently does, it could be a nice boost to A.J. Dillon. That wraps up my Packers. As you can see, I'm not overly high on any of these guys outside of Christian Watson, who I do like as round 3, round 4 type of guy. Romeo Doubs, I love at his price tag in the 12th round. Aaron Jones goes close to Mixon, and I will go Mixon every time. I even had, as you guys can see, Mattison projected higher than him at this point. So Jones is a guy that's coming down my rankings a little bit. And Jordan Love, if I'm going to take my stab on a late round guy, he's not the one I'm necessarily going all in on. But all the hype has been real about him. I just think this offense is going to be slow, ugly, bleed you out, and not something I'm overly interested in getting too invested in this year. All righty. I'm going to save my projections and then move on to our last team in this division. I think this one is far more interesting than what we were covering, and that is your Detroit Lions, who continue to ascend under Dan Campbell's watch with Jared Goff now in his 3rd season with the Lions. I think they only continue to climb. Plus, you got Jamison Williams after the first 6 games suspension. Once he's back, though, I could see this offense really taking it to another gear, to another level. So let's talk about my expectations for your Detroit Lions in 2023. I do think we get a slight boost. They were plus 38 above league average in plays run. I think we get even more closer to plus 50 this year with a few more pass attempts as Jared Goff continues to get more and more comfortable within this offense. But right last year, they were 55% pass, 45% rush. Very similar outlook here. And they're one of the clearer teams. Once the game gets going, you kind of know what's going to happen with them. If they get up, they love to go slower, bleed you out. You saw Jamal Williams, 262 carries last year. Really got I think he was 7th in the league in carries. He certainly was 1st in the league in rushing touchdowns, as we'll cover shortly. But they love getting a lead, pounding you out in the run game. But then when they're from behind, they take the foot on the gas. They throw. How many shootouts did we see? The Seahawks versus the Lions going for 70 points. We could see that in plenty of weeks, but it did make Jared Goff a little bit boomier buster than some of you might remember. But I think a little more volume could even steady that out just a bit. So the offense as a whole stays similar in their pass to rush ratio, but just a bit more volume within both of those facets of the game, especially with the exciting rookie Jahmyr Gibbs added. But what do I see for Goff? After going for right around this yardage total last year, I think a bit, about 100 yards more than what I saw last year. 4,579 yards, and then crossing into that 30-plus touchdown range with this team with a new weapon like Jahmyr Gibbs, who this team could not be more excited to have, with Jameson Williams apparently taking his game to the next level and getting mentored right now by Calvin Johnson. So between those two weapons being injected into it already, the fourth highest scoring offense last year, I think we could see them take it up yet another notch with Goff. A very quality season here, 4,579 yards, 31 touchdowns. He protected the ball very, very well since he's gotten there with the Lions. That's part of why they're keeping him around, is how he's not blowing games anymore. He's not getting careless with the football. He's not a Konami guy, obviously, but he's pounded in a rushing touchdown every single year, so I'll give him one for the season. But that's a quality aerial pie right there. 4,500 yards, 31 touchdowns, and I don't think there's too many mouths to feed. So not only is it a quality pie, but a pretty condensed one. I guess we can start. Let's talk about where we expect it to go, because Gibbs is going to be a big mouth to feed, and we'll transition to the backfield when we get there. But at wide receiver, you've got Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Sippy Cup, I like to call him, because he gets that Cooper Cup layup target role. Ben Johnson, a master at crafting slot routes and mismatches with Amon-Ra, St. Brown. So I think he continues to be an absolute target hog this year. Even with Jameson Williams, very exciting player coming in. You saw 140 targets go St. Brown's way this year. I think he can continue to ascend and be that lead guy that just continues to be, he's already a top 12 receiver, maybe top 7 potential. So I really, really like Amon-Ra St. Brown to get a huge workload, 165 targets, 112 catches, 1,344 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That would be the anomaly here, given that he only had 4 last year, to see that double. But the reason I project that is he was tackled a league high 7 times within the 5-yard line, so close to scoring so many times. And yeah, I get it. He's not a bull. So it's not like he's going to ever catch it and then burst through 3 defenders like some players might be, like a DK Metcalf, for example, can. But he is, that's a lot of unlucky. So I do think we get a bit of a spike here. He has also talked about very much working on his vertical game, trying to get deep more often instead of just being a sippy cup. That would elevate into the Cooper Cup role, where he could not only do the layup stuff, but then also get deep. We did not see that very often last year. As a rookie, though, when he went on that crazy tear to end 2021, he was getting deep. He was getting in the backfield. So I do think that role could continue to evolve, where we see a meeting of both worlds, that rookie season and last year, with even more volume, making Cup a guy I love targeting at the end of round 1, early round 2. If he falls to mid round 2, screaming praises. I absolutely love this guy. Between him versus like Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers in the league, that's a tough debate for me. I often find myself going Adams just because of the history, but the fact I can even consider that. He's also, Garrett Wilson right in that conversation towards the end of round 1. Which person do you lean for? At receiver, but while Jameson Williams is out, I don't see much in the way for St. Brown to get what he routinely saw last year, averaging just under 10 targets a game, but so many of those games were above 12 targets. I think over half of his game, I'm looking at it. Yeah, over half of his games were above 11 targets last year, multiple 12, 113 target day. So you don't see a lot of receivers. And the best part is, too, even the ones that weren't at that level, 9, 9, 9, 6, 9, 8. There's really only one game. He got hurt against Dallas. It got knocked out earlier that game. But other than that, he had one game below 6 targets. So this guy, it's just the steady volume, the layup targets, and with the upside to maybe evolve into more of a deep ball artist, more touchdowns. Really, really like him. I do really clearly like Jameson Williams as a player, and I like his production once he gets back onto the field. He only had 1 catch as a rookie, but it was a 40-yard touchdown. And all camp, the talk has been how much this guy has evolved as a complete and total receiver coming into the league, first percentile speed, similar to Tyreek Hill level of explosiveness, but a bigger body that can really, really get there. I think big things are in store for him, especially if he continues to be mentored by Calvin Johnson. So I had to account for the fact that he's going to miss the first 6 games, but once he comes back in those 10 games, I think he's going to be right around 70 to 80 yards a game. I think he'll score a touchdown more often than he won't, as a very, very quality lid lifter. I mean, you could see last year what Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond and these nobodies could do. I really think Ben Johnson's going to scheme this guy brilliantly. Now, till he's back, I do think Marvin Jones returns to Detroit here. He's still solid. He's definitely lost a bit of that next gear. He used to routinely average 12.7 to 13.5, somewhere in that range, yards per reception. And last couple of years with the Jags, we've seen him go down to 11.5 and 11. I do think back in this more explosive offense here, at least in terms of verticality. I think Marvin Jones could get to that 12 or so yards per reception again with a pretty good catch rate. He's always been a great contested catch guy. He used to do wonders for Detroit. So in this homecoming, brings a nice stabilizing veteran presence. I think he fills the job quite well till we have Jameson Williams back, and then fits in as a quality wide receiver 3 that doesn't just disappear, but ultimately it's a lot bigger mouths around him with St. Brown, Jameson Williams. So those games, good kind of handcuff. If you draft Jameson Williams in round 10 or so, which great recommendation, definitely do it. Marvin Jones, the last round guy, could potentially be that bridge until he's back. But I don't want to discount Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end they drafted ahead of Michael Myers, because they liked his pass catching prowess, that pedigree being at Iowa, the tight end university pretty much. And so far in OTAs, all the talk using the big body and red zone drills and impressive after the catch, the way that he moves his frame, it seems unfair for a big guy. A lot of interesting quotes and hype coming out about Laporta. And last year we saw that Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra. Once TJ Hawkinson was gone, there were decent days for some of these tight ends. It's an offense that does like to use Dan Campbell, a former tight ends coach, former tight end himself. He knows how to use this position. They just haven't really had that talent after Hawkinson was gone. So I think Laporta could bring some nice stability, and as the year gets on, get better and better. I do have him going for, I believe, like 15% target share. Yep, exactly. 15% target share, 92 targets, and a quality overall pie. And just above him on the target totem pole. So for me, it goes clear cut St. Brown, doubling up the next closest guy in targets, mostly because Jameson Williams will be out. I think he'll be the second clear target once he is back after those first 6 games. But I think right behind those guys will be Jahmyr Gibbs. So we can start turning to the backfield, and we'll start as a receiver. This has been a great receiving role for DeAndre Swift, or whatever back has been there the last few seasons. Typically it's Swift, but they have averaged 19, 13, 11, 13, 18, and 15% target share. And then Gibbs, among the best receiving prospects to come out in the last 5 years. I definitely see him being right in that 13 to 19, anywhere in that range. So I slapped him in at 16% target share, 98 total targets. I think that is quite, it's a lot for a running back. And yet I think he's going to, you talked about in camp, lining up in the slot, lining up outside, all over the formation, on the backfield with David Montgomery. They are already scheming up so many creative ways to get the ball into this guy's hands, and he is so dangerous once he has it. So just like DeAndre Swift would routinely score 3 to 5 touchdowns through the air, I think 5 is absolutely within Jahmyr Gibbs' range here. 600-ish so receiving yards seems like a lot, but again, I think he's that damn explosive, and he's going to be that heavily used. Because let's say Jameson Williams doesn't come along. This is projecting both of those guys to be quality guys, but this might not even be the ceiling. If Jameson Williams does not take that next step, they're going to need a clear-cut number 2, and I really think Gibbs could just play wide out for them. And they put Montgomery on the field as well. So I think a big receiving role in store against 607.5 on 74 catches for Gibbs, in addition to, and I have him obviously, as you can see there, 39% carries going to him, 49% to Montgomery. That's pretty much how we saw it with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, the big-bodied guy. When they get the lead, gets the carries, batters down the defense. They have the ability to pay Jamal Williams less and keep him. They paid Montgomery top 5 running back money in the league as a guy they've consistently faced. Clearly, there was something they really liked about Montgomery ahead of Jamal Williams, who just put up 17 rushing touchdowns on 262 carries. So I expect similar usage for David Montgomery, one of my favorite round 9 or so picks. 14 touchdowns coming his way, less than Jamal Williams scored last year. I don't think that's actually crazy in the least. 1,000-ish yards, 14 touchdowns. I think the receiving game will be next to nothing. And he is a good pass protector. He can get it done as a receiver. But why would you use him when you have Jahmyr Gibbs? So I do have Gibbs going for more total yards, around 1,500 total yards and about 8 to 9 total touchdowns. But that doesn't mean Montgomery can't score a ton on the ground. So I think this will be Jahmyr Gibbs, a more consistent player, more consistently involved, the right type of game flow. We'll see Montgomery, just like Jamal Williams, spike for 20 points and 2 touchdowns and 3 touchdowns and have these monster days. But there will be some games, if it becomes a shootout, if they get down early, that you might get just like Jamal Williams last year. 2 points, 1 point, not involved at all. So that's going to be the risk with Montgomery, but I still think the touchdown upside is massive within this offense. And so I still like him quite a bit as well. And that covers the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff taking yet another step forward and especially in terms of receiving touchdowns with better weapons and Jamison Williams and Gibbs now at his disposal. Montgomery filling the Jamal Williams role admirably in a great 8 to 9 round pick. Gibbs is the one that he goes round 4, and I projected him higher than I expected to. So I might start getting some more shares. After looking at these numbers, I'm kind of thinking I don't have enough of him at this point, should he play as high as this level. I love the player. I was worried about how much usage would be there to go around, but as I mapped out the receiving usage, to me, he was the clear-cut number 2 right now, second biggest mouth, given that Williams is going to be suspended for about a little bit more than a third of the season. So I like Gibbs more than I thought I was, and I definitely want to start adding more of him to my best ball portfolio since I don't have much of him yet. But that wraps up my Detroit Lions. In terms of how I see this division shaking out, I actually think the Lions end up taking it this year, finishing with 11 to 12 wins, the first monster winning season for the Lions. The defense is improving, good culture there. I think they win the division, followed by the Vikings, who also finished with about 10 wins, sneak into the playoffs as a wild card there. And then, I do think the Bears take a little bit of a step forward with Justin Fields. I don't love, as you guys saw, Jordan Love. So those guys will be competing in the basement, about 4 to 5 wins for them both, neither of them being playoff teams, in my opinion. But I guess a more of a winning culture there in Green Bay. So maybe they can get to 7, 8 wins and still not make the playoffs type of situation. Unless Love is the second coming, like so many of them claim he is. But I don't expect that at all. So that wraps up our division, NFC East here. We got a handful, no, just one question, but 5 of you here. So on your way out, please do consider that thumbs up button. But if you have a question, please do let us know. We got Jordan. Hey, great to see you, Jordan T. Awesome, my man. Missed you too, man. Been listening to the pods, but got some, hell yeah. Great to see you. Hope you make it through this weekend. So last weekend was actually the bachelor party. This weekend's just a family trip. So I did make it through. It wasn't pretty, but ultimately did make it through. But Sunday was an absolute corpse. That's about as hungover as I've been in. I don't even know how long. But yeah, go Lions. Like I just said, I really think they could win this division, make some noise in the playoffs. I love the culture they've built there, and now they've got the talent to match the culture. So I'm a huge fan. Tunes, we did this one in an hour. Let's go. It's the truth. I'm telling you, he slows me down. I'm able to just kind of burn through without having to stop for him ripping me to shreds. I always appreciate his perspective, given that he'll pull some cold water where it might need to be poured on and things of that nature. But does make us able to speed up when there's no debate. Yeah, exactly. As you said, dude, it's too many disagreements with him. So when it's all about me, baby, we can move a little bit quicker pace here. But I guess that wraps us up. Thank you again so much for being here. On your way out, that thumbs up button would be so greatly appreciated. All these projections will be available for your perusal, for your manipulation on rotostreetjournal.com come July, and all the rankings and whatnot will be there. I'm going to do a big board update once I hang up here. Long overdue, about a week overdue here on a big board update. Now that I've been doing these projections, it's time to look at them and make some moves there. So I will be updating that later today. You can find it at rotostreetjournal.com. You can find me at Rotostreet Wolf. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys put on this stream, or hit me in the DMs if you really prefer that. But thank you again so much. Again, likes, shares, retweets, all that good stuff on the way out would be so greatly appreciated. In a world full of fancy sheep, be the wolf guys. Later.